All right, welcome back to Builders, Makers, Doers, everybody. I'm excited to introduce Scott Vogeli with Modern Edison Electrical. This is going to be a fun conversation because he's building his electrical contractor business pretty unique and with a pod style that I haven't seen before. And so I'm excited to bring this conversation to everybody. Let's build off that. Scott, welcome to Builders, Makers, Doers.
Elliot, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. We got on just a phone call that was probably a month ago now. I don't know. And we're just chatting about business and how you're building yours and vice versa. And we met through a coaching program with Dan Martell. And so I've been waiting to have this conversation. I'm excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to share, man. What we're building is unique. So love to get the word out.
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody building an electrical contractor business similar to how you are. We talk to a lot of contractors, which is kind of funny. I've never come across this. So before we get into that, what's really unique about what you're doing today, I always like to kind of go back and start at the beginning and talk a little bit about your background, how you got to where you're at today, how you started the business, and then we'll dive into, where it's at today and where you're going. But walk back to the start.
Yeah, so the company I founded in 2015, so it's been 11 years now. And it all kind of was born out of not really knowing what I wanted to do after high school. I had a construction class where I really loved being in class and I loved the teacher, but all the other classes it just felt so dull. So after high school, I found out about Michigan State University's electrical tech program, and they're one of the best in the nation for electrical training. And so I went there and just really got hooked on the whole thing and did part of my apprenticeship in Michigan, born and raised in Michigan. And then after about 2 years working there, I relocated to Sacramento, California, and that's where I've been since 2011. But opened my company and worked in the residential and commercial space for about 7 or 8 years. And things were going well. I had a lot figured out. It was, a trudge through the swamp in the beginning to figure out taxes and figure out, dealing with customer support. And there's a lot more that I started to learn once I got off payroll and out on my own. But there was an experience that I had where I got an emergency service call out to a young family, and they had a 6-month-old baby and a couple other kids. And they take me to the bedroom, and there's an arc flash that had happened behind a dresser in the middle of the night, and it had melted the plug and the wall was black. And I'm standing there just, luckily this house didn't burn down. And now that I'm here to fix it, but if I was here yesterday and I replaced that plug, this never would have happened. And that experience really just kind of stuck with me. And so I started doing a bunch of research and trying to figure out if there were fire safety specialists, if other electricians were thinking about it in kind of a unique way. I got together with the Sacramento Fire Department and developed the Safe Home Method. And it's basically what electricians can do to prevent electrical fires. Starts out with initial assessment into a deep dive investigation that leads to 3 options for a solution to eliminate the electrical fire risk in the home. And so that was kind of the big turning point for me, is going from working by myself and having this electrical trade, and I really love being an electrician, but kind of stumbling upon this bigger purpose and kind of having a niche and a specialty, and really to go deep on something is what I've been focused on building the last 3 years.
Yeah. Well, you did not tell me that story to start initially. And that's pretty cool to see that, you went to somebody's house. Could have been a much worse situation. Thank God it wasn't. But I love hearing kind of those origin stories sometimes, because a lot of times for, a business owner, they saw a problem in the market. They saw an opportunity. They were dealing with something themselves and realized there could be a better way to do this. And if I could figure that out, maybe I can build my business around it. And so that's a lot of times how, folks get started, it seems like, or they just start solving the problem and all of a sudden they have a business. There was enough opportunity out there. But that's pretty cool. I'm curious though, dive a little bit more into the safe home method. You mentioned that developing that with the fire department, but were you then marketing that? Were you working with the fire department to just get that education out to homeowners? Walk me through that a little bit, how that played into growing the business.
Yeah, that was really the point at which the business got traction and started to build. And I think the biggest reason for that is, one, there's a big desire for it in the market, and it's really filling a hole and a gap and a need that a lot of people just aren't really even aware of what's going on. And when you do kind of show them what's going on and the possibility of fixing it, it's a pretty simple, straightforward solution. A lot of people
Mhm.
just want to, you know, yeah, of course, I want to move my house from a dangerous house to a safe house,
Yeah, yeah.
is the experience we've had. And so that safe home method has really been the thing that has taken us, I was doing probably $40,000-$50,000 months, and now we're doing around $200,000 months and building the team. And our biggest constraint right now is finding talent and going deeper in our recruiting. But that was really the biggest leverage for, from like a business standpoint, to actually have an offer that we go deep on that the market really had a craving for. And so that's really unlocked a lot, much more than just doing electrical services in general has ever, given me in the past years.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So have you found it? I mean, I'd imagine, folks, obviously, as you mentioned, they want a safer house. Well, let me take a step back. Tell everybody why that there was an issue in the home. 'Cause I think that's important. You and I talked about this, but what you're really focused on in older homes and that wiring, just give a quick overview. Cause I think that'll help everybody understand when you say you're making them a safer home, what you guys are
Mm,
actually doing.
right. Yeah. So there's the aspect of age. And one of the biggest reasons why Sacramento has really been a great place to start this is there's a big population boom from about 1890 to 1930, where that leaves Sacramento with a huge inventory of 100-plus-year-old electrical systems that are all cloth wound electrical systems, like the really early stuff.
Mhm.
No arc fault protection. A lot of people are just unaware that maintenance is even something that you need to do. An analogy I like to use with homeowners is, your tires wear out and you got to get new tires. Your brake pads, the electrical system's a lot the same. If you leave the electrical to just age over time, especially over 100 years, things start to loosen up. Different pieces of the equipment start to corrode. And if there's not a clean path for the electricity to flow, that's when heat is created. And there's 150 to 200 electrical fires in Sacramento every year alone, just from electrical fires that the fire department is actually having to come out and deal with. So that's really the biggest thing, is just, the unawareness that, like, oh, I had no idea, everything's been working fine, and then all of a sudden there's this fire. The other aspect is unpermitted work, homeowner special type stuff, things that are installed that aren't up to code that people think maybe isn't a big deal. But that's where a lot of the electrical fires come from. It's obviously a dangerous system, and if you don't do it right, it can cause a fire. So that's something else we look at, is, were there permits in the history of the house? What was done? We find a lot of ugly stuff that we got to let homeowners know that, this is definitely not something that's reliable. But then you also have the layer of rodent damage and potential, wiring in an attic that's been installed where walkways are, and the jacket's all scuffed off. And there's just so many different things that can lead to something going wrong in the electrical system. So that education piece, like you talked about, is also a big part of what we do, is letting people know, hey, here's the electrical system, here's what could go wrong, here's what's going wrong in your home. And then, we present them with a solution to choose from.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's so fantastic. So again, everybody listening, identifying this opportunity or this problem in the market. And then what I think is so cool as well is developing the assessment, the deep dive, and the three solutions. I think that's different. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but that's different than how a lot of contractors go out and get new work and new business in the industry. Is most of it seems to be, especially as a one man electrical contractor, referral based, maybe some marketing, like an ad here, an ad there, or whatever. But most of the time, it feels like it's kind of referral based. You've created a system to go out and get leads. Talk through that a little bit. Like where did you learn to do that? Because again, you're by trade an electrical contractor. You probably weren't a marketer. And so talk through that piece, because I think again, that's quite a bit different in how you're going out and promoting your service and getting people educated on this problem.
Yeah, definitely. It's not something that I was doing right away. I was on Angie's leads, which was Home Advisor at the time back in 2015. And the reason for that is because I was the head of the Home Advisor technology back in 2014 when I was working for a smaller outfit, and I was just, producing jobs and getting 5-star reviews, and I was building up this reputation for somebody else. And I was like, I think it's time to just do this on my own. I'm ready to jump out and see, what I can make of this. And, I actually, in our coaching side business where we coach contractors, early contractors and electricians, I will, in certain situations, actually prescribe, if you will, the Angie's List as a way to get started, just because of the power of the one-man show, being able to be right on top of his phone and start to build a reputation. You can be a little bit cheaper than the bigger organizations with systems. You can do an excellent job, and you can kind of eat the cost and live on that low profit for a bit of time while you're gaining that traction of reputation.
Yeah.
So in that way, it was good, but you hit a certain ceiling at a certain point. You really can't scale an entire business and a whole marketing system on Angie's leads. So really what kind of birthed the whole need for the marketing was me getting to that point where I had this solution and I had, what the market wanted, but I really didn't have a way of actually getting a hold of customers and doing that. And so that's when I launched into meta ads and building a personal brand and a business brand, and having the social media be part of the engine of the ads so that I could build credibility on my own and then drive traffic to that. And so that's been a huge unlock when it comes to control over leads. My biggest problem used to be sometimes we're really busy and I was, overwhelmed. And then other times I was like, where's the next job?
Yeah.
Or a lot of people can relate to that. I lived in that pain for quite some time. And then I finally built a marketing engine. And so now we track how many leads and how many dollars and what our ROAS is. And it's a huge relief, really, when you start to build that system. So I see in the trades that being a big missing piece, where most guys are living by that fluctuation and really just need a marketing system.
Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into that. That kind of is a good segue into what you're doing today. You mentioned the coaching piece, but talk through your setup now, because I think, again, it's a pretty unique structure to how you're building Modern Edison. And then we'll dive into that incorporates into the coaching, or vice versa, and how you're helping coach journeymen, et cetera, on doing the same thing. But just walk through the structure of the company, maybe why you decided to structure it that way, what you see as an advantage to doing it that way, and everything that went into that decision.
Yeah, definitely. So it all kind of started by back when Hormozy launched $100 million offers. I read that and it really just piqued my interest. He was licensing a business model, and I was at a point to where I was hitting that ceiling on my own and thinking to myself, what do I want to do for the next 60 years of my life? And through books and podcasts and just figuring out, the whole broader arena of being an entrepreneur, I started to think a lot more outside the box than just being an electrician.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity to just, get a couple extra trucks, get an office, start hiring guys and do the classic electrical contractor thing. But I had more of an aversion to that than anything. And so I wanted to build something unique, and I wanted to figure out if I could give myself something, as like if I could get in a time machine and go back to 2015, talk to myself, what would I build for that Scott? And so diving more into the structure of what we've got going right now, it's like a franchise on payroll for journeymen. So journeyman comes in, he's working for another company, and like I was at the top of being an electrician, I kind of was at a ceiling working for a company thinking like, what's the next step?
Yeah.
The way we hire these guys in, we don't hire apprentices because we couldn't afford to have an unskilled installer. We hire them in so that they can install anything and everything in residential without any hand holding at all. They can order materials and pass inspections and keep customers happy. That's like the starting point. And these guys are typically 5 to 10 year experienced journeymen. And I don't have to do anything when it comes to the project. Over and beyond that, we also have them record their own ads. And so they're also in charge of marketing and filling their own calendar. We have a media and marketing assistant that gets assigned to their pod, which is their like little organism that they're the pod operator of.
Mm-hmm.
They handle the marketing creation, the production is completed, and then it goes in the system for the leads. The lead comes in, they also sell their own project. And so we have a sales coaching AI tool that they do on a daily basis. We have weekly sales tracking and sales coaching. And so they're gaining sales mastery as well. And then it comes to the project management, and we leave that to them. We have certain key performance indicators and bonuses and commissions and reductions when it comes to the performance of the actual job. And then the fourth pillar is the financial clarity. So are you hitting your gross margins? Are you hitting the right production rate monthly? So their speed is there as well. So I've built like a custom commission structure that where the majority of their money comes from is in those commissions. And on an hourly basis, they get $40 an hour. And in California, that's not exciting.
Yeah.
So they learn really quick. The better that they work with the media guy to develop the ads and review the leads and make those ads better, the better their sales appointments go because the leads are higher quality. And the more they train, obviously, with their sales, they're able to close bigger ticket numbers. Then they handle it. And then they present weekly at our KPI meeting on their dashboard of their pod how all their numbers look. And these are journeymen. So they get access to the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted when I was working for a company. But all I did was clock in, and I drove to a job site and, home advisor, customer name and everything. And I did everything and I went home. So it's really like a contractor, independent contractor school inside my electrical contracting business for journeymen to learn what it's like to operate like an independent contractor before they get their C10, so they can be prepared when they do launch.
Okay, so then, yeah, is that the goal that you're setting them up to go out on their own, or will they kind of always maintain and be part of Modern Edison? And how do you scale that long term if that's the case?
Yeah, excellent question. I have chosen to shoot myself in the foot on purpose in that regard. Totally getting kicked in the teeth. There's an upside to the recruiting aspect. And what we have when we talk to the guys, we're, listen, this is a 3 to 4 year trajectory of you really getting what you need to know in all 4 of these pillars and be able to lead your pod with your 2 assistants. You're going to gain these skills and you're going to have a foundation to actually launch your business so that when you do get out, you can scale.
Yeah.
Instead of spending, like I did, 8 years figuring it out and working on your own and just slowly kind of trickling in the wisdom. Here's a boot camp. Here's a training ground where you can clock in and make money like you were over here, but also prepare. And so the mentality is they're going to be here 3 to 4 years. And that period of time makes sense for us to train them up and have them be part of the company. And then once they get to that like graduation stage, they can choose to defer and stay with the company if they want to get into coaching and help onboard the new journeyman and train the pods and take on like a coaching role inside the company. If they want to go toward finance or they want to go toward project management, there's plenty of organization to grow into if they want to come out of a pod model and be part of the organization. So there is like a long-term career trajectory option for them. This has really produced a lot of excitement and a lot of talent coming to the table because we're so open and because we're like, hey, let's do this for you from day one. What are your goals? What are you trying to do? Hey, listen, if you stay with us for 3 to 4 years, that's plenty of revenue for us to make it work. And, we have a certain churn that we can predict, and then pair that with our recruiting engine and our recruiting pipeline so that we can scale while guys are coming in and leaving like a university does.
Mhm. Wow, that's super interesting. I didn't realize, that piece of it, and that was the goal. That, yeah, I assumed that they were coming in to kind of build their pod as I love the franchise on payroll term. I'm pretty sure you coined that one, but I love that because you're giving that franchise feeling that you're coming in to learn how to operate your own business, but you're not taking the risk of just starting your own business and not having anybody to learn from, et cetera. And so I thought that's pretty cool. And then, preparing them just to go out on their own. I mean, do you envision there's going to be some folks that don't want to go out on their own? Maybe they say, hey, I like that I have the brand, or I like that I have, some of the backing from, call it home office, or I don't know what you're calling your internal services. But how does that look? Are you going to try to keep some of these folks on long term, or is it really just that kind of university style model where you're training them and then go out on your own?
Yeah, it is the former. So the better that we can create the culture and the better that we can make it like such a cushiony spot to be once they're performing well, we want it to be to where they're like, I'm set. Like I have time freedom. I work 40 hours a week. I can take off a whole month if I wanted to. They have their certain parameters that they need to hit their key performance indicators. And an example is like, hey, as long as you are installing $40,000 worth of contracts in a month and you're at 50% gross margin on your contracts, you can work whenever you want. You can work 1 day a month if you wanted. If you hit your number, we have no issue. That's enough production for your pod to be considered a success under the business's eyes. And if it's consistently under that, we got to consider what training or what you need to do to get up to speed. And if you don't ever make it over that, that's the commission gate as well. So you gotta hit those two in order to break into your commission. But the idea is, it's not like to turn them out and to just like continue like running that system. I do want some of them, and I believe that a lot of guys, maybe 10%, will see it as a bigger opportunity that has less risk, plenty of money, lots of space, great culture, and they just want to be a part of the team. Yeah. I think we'll get very highly talented, very bought in, passionate people who want to be a part of the fire safety movement that we're spreading across America. We're at 1 million right now. We're looking to 10x in the next 18 months and get into the Bay Area and go to Southern California nationwide and get up to 2,000 pods in the US in the next 10 to 15 years. So that's like a big level of opportunity for anybody who does want to defer and say, hey, I'd rather just buy in and have a bigger piece of the fun and the mission that we're on to prevent electrical fires. So I would love to, I'm looking to build that culture and to build that select few that really makes an all-star organization with anybody who's more like I was, is like, lone wolf type. Mm-hmm. I'd rather just go out on my own. I don't want to be on a franchise. Like I never even considered having a franchise because it was attached to something. So it's complete freedom when they leave. But there's also an equity event when they do leave. If they want to take their pod, if they want to take their administrative assistant and their marketing assistant and take this little, microorganism that they've been building over the last 3 to 4 years, they can buy out the team, pay the company, and they can take the systems and all of our intellectual property and go do fire safety on their own in their own business completely on their own. We license the business model and they pay whatever valuation that we have from the revenue that they're doing. So they can do that. They can just cut the tie and leave clean, or they can continue with the organization and have a career with us.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, because I would imagine there's going to be several, and maybe even the folks that are still licensing the business model would get this advantage as well. But you're in a unique position to be by creating the main business, right? That is Scott that you're leading. You're looking out 2-3 years in the future and building that IP, building the marketing, building all the things with the next, trends that are going to work, and testing the things that they don't have to go test and spend a year trying to figure it out or whatnot. So I could totally see folks wanting to continue in your model just to get access to that and say, hey, if you're going to continue on with best practices and give us access to all of those things, like, heck yeah, I want to stay involved with that because I want to continue to grow my business.
Yeah, and that's kind of the segue into the coaching.
Yeah.
Anybody can join the coaching at any time. It's like an open coaching, and it's unique in its own way, where we have our own internal company meetings, and we have our own pod operator training hours that we train the pods. Everything that we're teaching, those 4 pillars: marketing, sales, product delivery, and financial clarity, that's the foundation first framework. And so we're teaching that to the journeyman to be successful. Anybody part of the coaching program sits in on the company meetings and the company trainings, like fly on the wall scenario, taking notes and just looking at what we're doing, looking at the real life conversations, looking at the problems, looking at the numbers. It's like a glass wall in front of our company. They get access to just watch.
Yeah.
And then we do Q&A coaching calls weekly, and you bring up your questions. You bring up, here's what I saw you doing, I want to implement that, or here's what I'm having trouble with. What playbooks can you send me? They get access to everything that we're building on an ongoing basis, not only now, but also as we're scaling from 1 to 10 million and 10 to 100 million. And eventually it's a $1 billion top line revenue at 2,000 pods nationwide. So that whole vision is accessible through that coaching program. So when you're a pod operator and you run that whole system, and it's, like the back of your hand at that point, you want to go out on your own, you buy into the coaching program, you stay in the culture, we're launching an adventure retreat next year, September, where we do like part adventure, part networking, part, learning, where we have speakers come in, and we want to like deepen that whole ecosystem from pod operator to coaching student, and create like a deep culture there that you can be a part of. So if you did want to split off and just disappear, I totally understand. But if you wanted to start your business and buy in, then basically you become a contractor inside the coaching program with continued access to what we're continuing to iterate and get better in our new playbooks and everything that we're developing as we scale.
And so give me the difference there real quick, just so I understand and everybody listening. So those folks joining the coaching program are not coming in they're not on payroll. They're just paying you as part of a coaching program to get access to similar trainings that the folks coming into Modern Edison. I don't know why I can't say that in my first shot. Coming into the company would get. Is that accurate? They just don't have to be part of the company.
Right, exactly. So it's like having this close-knit boot camp, and somebody on the outside being like, I want to be a part of that.
And are those already licensed? Those are folks already licensed?
Those are folks already licensed. They already founded a business. They're already doing their own thing. They just want access to watch us scale and to get access to all of our playbooks. Anybody, struggling in the beginning, just started out. These are guys in this coaching program who are like, I'm struggling with leads. I don't have any systems. I don't have an assistant. All these things that I've already figured out currently. That's why
You got the system. Yeah.
I've got so much to share already. I was going to launch the program later, but I've got so many playbooks, and I've got, the marketing engine dialed, and our sales dialed, and our delivery dialed. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I've got basically the whole picture. We've launched the program. So it's a way for anybody to get access to all of our resources and watch us implement, and then take what they want and ask questions about how to do it in their business.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I want to get to where we're going in the future. You talked a little bit about it, but I want to make sure we hit that. Before that, though, think back over the last, I think you said 11 years. And what's one of the most challenging things or challenging times that you ran into that you had to overcome to get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that really sticks out to me is that marketing engine. That was the thing that was like daunting when I didn't have anything in place. I didn't want to change what I was doing because it was producing the money I did have. So it's like, how am I going to experiment when I don't have like a marketing budget? Like I have like my
Mhm.
family living on the income that I'm making, and I got to like reinvest in the business and spend money on marketing dollars when I have no idea what I'm doing. And so that was the case. You just spent, I just, money that I had, I just talked to the wife. I'm like, we got to like build something bigger. So part of the money I was making was going into talking to agencies and letting them experiment and giving them money and just taking notes and be like, what are you doing? Can I do it? And the real unlock happened when I hired the virtual assistant. That was something that was not even on my radar. And I hired that assistant. I think I listened to a podcast about VAs in the Philippines and how it was like, the accent wasn't all that bad. The economic translation of USD to their Philippines peso was amazing. So like they could make a really decent income on $6 to $10 an hour. And so I'm just thinking to myself, I'm trying to do all this stuff in the background and I've got the tools on. I barely have enough time with the kids that I was having. I had my first son in 2020. I've got 3 kids now, so it's been a long window of time with newborns in the house and everything. And so the huge unlock was getting Sweet, my assistant. She's an absolute all-star and has documented the entire administrative process while we've been building, and was able to reach out to people and schedule me appointments and get me phone calls and make a lot of stuff happen so that it would use my time so efficiently that I could get a lot more done than me doing all that myself. So getting an assistant in the beginning is what we coach. Is like, if you don't have an assistant and you don't have a journeyman, great. Assistant is number one. If you do have technicians, get an assistant because they're going to help you get organized. I'm sure your technicians are upset at how unorganized your processes are. But once we did go through about a year to a year and a half of testing SEO and testing outreach programs and sending emails, and we were doing mailers for a while, and I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall and listening to podcasts and trying to figure out what I want to do. And the meta ads just they hooked. Like the social media in conjunction with the meta ads, with that fire safety message and the education around it, that's really just taken hold. So that's really what we've been able to scale, is a referral program on the backside of the meta ads and social media for like branding. And that's like what we're scaling right now, that we've actually gotten control over our leads so that we can predict how many leads we need to come in so that when we hire, it makes sense. And so we've got the flywheel producing, and we can continue to go deeper on the recruiting end so that we can pair those two together as we scale. But that was the biggest thing, is actually getting a marketing engine in place.
Yeah. Well, it's not easy. We can attest to that as well. Figuring out all the angles there is difficult. But awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I want to make sure we hit on, what's the next 3 to 5 years look like? Where do you want to be? What's the vision? You talked a little bit about going nationwide, but I love your mentality around scaling. And so I think it's important for everybody to hear just what is that vision for you?
Yeah. So the bigger, broader mission for us is to eliminate every preventable electrical fire in Sacramento, move to the Bay Area around San Francisco, and make a big impact there. I really see that, it's preventable. Like 90% of these electrical fires are preventable. And outside of California, there's so many cities that have electrical systems, homes built before 1950, that really are in need of having some sort of a maintenance plan, just kind of widespread throughout the whole US. And so that's really the big vision, and the big goal is to make a big impact on how many deaths there are every year in the US, how much property damage, how many house fires, Yeah, I had a grandfather who was a firefighter for a lot of years. My little brother Jason's a firefighter in Palo Alto, California. And the running joke is that, Scott, if you did your job better, maybe Jason would have to run into fewer burning buildings.
Yeah.
So that's really the big mission, is to just make an impact on that and change the way that our society as a whole sees the electrical system. And there's more maintenance that just gets built in as a norm when homeowners are considering what they have to do over the years. So yeah, like I said, that's getting from where we are now to 20 journeymen by the end of next year, and then going from 20 to 2,000 nationwide. So we'll look at getting a CEO who has experience in scaling trades businesses, and we'll bring him in to help us scale nationwide. And that's the big goal, is to get to 2,000, which would be 40 pods per state, top line revenue of $1 billion.
That's awesome. Wow. Well, that's great. I think everybody's probably taking a lot of notes on this conversation because, again, I think you're approaching building your business much different than most electrical contractors. And I think that's fantastic. So appreciate the time, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we'll catch up here on our next call. But for everybody out there, we will see you next week.